Hello and welcome to the Oddschecker betting show. This is, of course, your Masters preview sponsored by BoyleSports. I am your host, George Elek, and I'm delighted to be joined by Oddschecker's golf tipster, Niall Lyons, fresh off the plane, straight from the tarmac home into the office to write the Oddschecker preview. Niall, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Tired, as we say, but I spent the weekend in Villamura, which was quite nice. It was quite sun on my back before the Masters week this week. It was my 10th wedding anniversary, in fact. So,
nice. Congratulations.
I spent most of the weekend quite jealous of watching fellas get into big blackout jeeps with their golf clubs fired into the back and off to the nearest golf courses. But yeah, I didn't bring my clubs this time, but hopefully next time.
I reckon on a 10-year anniversary holiday, if you had got into one of those Jeeps, you wouldn't have had a 20-year anniversary holiday in 10 years' time.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was for the best. So
yeah, good.
Next
good
time,
call.
as we say.
As I say, delighted that BoyleSports are sponsoring this show today. And who are you backing, the viewer, to win the green jacket at Augusta? Whether it is keeping the faith in Rory, Scotty Scheffler, or John Rahm, or somebody like Victor Hovland, could be primed to challenge. Interesting use of Hovland there. We'll get on to him in a second. But BoyleSports are offering new customers £20 in free bets after you place a £10 bet on the Masters. So they're also paying up to 12 places and letting you pick your own extra places for the first major of the year. So you can choose 6, 8, 10 or 12. And once the golf gets underway at Augusta, BoyleSports have you covered with a wide range of in-play markets, including all the 3 balls and 2 balls. You can also use their Acca Rewards to boost your selections up to 100% on all golf Accas as well, whether that be in-play or pre-event. For more info, head to BoyleSports.com, and do always remember, please, to gamble responsibly. So yeah, cheers for BoyleSports. Make sure if you don't have an account, you go and sign up now. A cracking offer for the viewers and listeners to the show. And as I say, with the multiple places on offer too, I will run through as Niall gives us his selections as to what the prices are. And looking at the market as it is now, and I'll take the prices for the 12 places here just to give an idea of what you're looking at if you want to maximise the place of Boyles. Rory McIlroy is 5-1, Scotty Scheffler 11-2, John Rahm 7-1, Jordan Spieth 12, Justin Thomas 12-1, Patrick Cantlay 14-1, as is Xander Schauffele, and then Cam Smith, the shortest priced live golfer, of course, who came close to winning it last year before being the latest of many to fall foul of the famous 12th Augusta on the Sunday, is 14-1 as well, 16-1 bar those. But of course, if you go for the fewer places, for example, McIlroy, who is 5-1 with 12 places, is 7-1 6 places, 13-2 8 places, and 6-1 10 places. So you can see there that you can kind of pick your odds, pick your places, and maximise your profit based on that. And we start on McIlroy because, Niall, he is your headline selection this year.
Yeah, I go into the Masters every year almost like really afraid to get it wrong more than anything else. I'm quite confident when it comes to the US Open and Open Championships that I can land on the right player, but I don't think there's anything worse than watching the Masters over the weekend, like maybe even with a runaway winner or something like that, but you haven't got a man in the hunt. It's desperate. So there's more of a fear of getting it wrong, and especially when you're backing Rory McIlroy, you can be made to look a bit silly sometimes. But nevertheless, like his form, which of course started here last year with that sparkling final round, has been exemplary ever since. And yeah, I think he was quite unlucky looking back not to win a major in 2022, especially at the Open Championship, where he did everything right. And sometimes putts just don't drop on a Sunday, no matter how well you're hitting them. And he didn't really hit any bad putts. They just didn't drop. So he was a shade unlucky that day. His ball striking heading into Augusta is absolutely tremendous. And what is telling, I think, this year compared to previous years is that McIlroy has had his problems this year with the driver and the putter at different times, and both those aspects have been solved quite quickly, which is not usually the case with McIlroy. Whenever he has a problem with a certain area of his game, it usually takes longer for that to iron out. But he changed his putter, and he was made to change his driver, and he finally found a driver that looked to be working in Austin at the WGC, the match play. So yeah, things are really looking up the wet conditions that are materialising now as well. We've seen it at the ladies' event last week, towards the end of the week at Augusta as well, and then the forecast for the rest of the week as well. The wind might not suit McIlroy. Who knows what side of the draw he'll be on in terms of that, but the rain will certainly help and maybe edge towards, almost like a 2020 Masters when Dustin Johnson won in November. If anything, head towards that. And I think it'll be almost more difficult for, those around the greens. We always talk about work around the greens here at Augusta. I think it'll be different, or it'll be more difficult for players who separate themselves usually at Augusta with their short game, the likes of Jordan Spieth. I think it'll become slightly more difficult just because play around the greens will undoubtedly become just a bit easier with soft conditions. So everything towards McIlroy. He's got 4 wins in his last, I think, just 18 events, which works out at 1 win in every 4.5 events for the last just short of a year. So we're getting 7-1 this week. Where he's has only been out of the top 10 twice, I think, in the last 9 appearances here. So I was half tempted to go win only this week just because of the price, but he's very rarely out of the frame here, no matter how badly he starts. So I think you have to go with one of the top 3. I think at some stage of the week you'll almost regret not betting one of the top 3. So you have to choose between them, and Scheffler has the defending champion thing going against him, and Rahm just has not quite as good preparation as the other 2, I think. So yeah, the top bets, Rory, and fingers crossed that the time has finally come to land a Grand Slam.
As somebody who had just made peace with the fact that they won't be backing any of the top 3 in the market, Niall, I could have done without you saying that. A great case made for Rory, and undoubtedly, there's always a lot of eyeballs on Rory, whether that is because he's, the great hope from those of us either side of the Irish Sea, or in the States where he's a superstar around the world as well. But because of the controversy at the moment with Live Golf and with that every single Live player who could feasibly be invited to the Masters turning up at Augusta this weekend as well, there is of course added pressure. We saw a snippet of how he would deal with that pressure when going toe to toe with Patrick Reed a couple of months ago, and of course he came out on top. He's somebody who's had issues with pressure in the past, and not always, because he's won a lot of golf tournaments. How do you think he'll deal with what is there's no denying that a Masters win for him would mean more anyway, given the prestige and the fact that he's come so close in the past, but even added value to that given what's going on in the world of golf at the moment?
Well, I think recent evidence suggests that he is answering those questions. I think it was more than just a snippet of how he would deal with it, the manner in which he won in Dubai, the Monday finish that day. Obviously, he had the controversy with what happened with Patrick Reed earlier on in the week on the range there, and then obviously you had the incident up the tree with a lost ball as well. There was plenty of talking points that week, but to have Patrick Reed playing ahead of him and seeing him, he was absolutely tremendous, Paddy Reed, that Monday, and the punches that he threw at McIlroy was, normally we would do this podcast every April and come up with various reasons as to why McIlroy doesn't quite fit the bill or doesn't quite meet your expectations. But this year, that win in Dubai for me was almost like a major win. I don't think, and he said so when he came off the green when he was interviewed. He said he had never felt pressure like that in a long time, and I would suggest that it probably goes back to one of his last major wins was the last time he felt pressure like that, because I think the weight of the golfing world, and especially the way he's carried the PGA Tour in the last 12 months, that victory was it was like a major win, I think. And then of course he was in his 3rd match in the match play as well, when there was question marks around his driving. He was up early in that game and then was taken to the 18th hole, and that drive on the last that we seen where he knocked it to 4 or 5 feet on that par 4 when he was under severe pressure after being up early in the game and still being taken down the 18th. I can't remember whether he would have been on a playoff then or he would have been out. I think he probably would have been on a playoff, but that drive on 18 was just a sign of how he's dealt with that pressure again. So I'm quite optimistic that if it comes around that he has a chance of winning the Grand Slam, he is better prepared than he ever has been.
5 points each way is Niall's headline tip here for Rory McIlroy. As we say, you can pick your places with BoyleSports: 7-1, 6 places; 13-2, 8 places; 6-1, 10 places; 5-1, 12 places. They're all a fifth the odds, and I'm sure if Rory McIlroy does slip on the green jacket, Greg Norman will be the first on the 18th green to shake his hand and say well done. Maybe not. Before we get into the other selections, and I'm just going to ask you about the other two in the market as well, we should now just touch on the forecast and the weather and the conditions, because you mentioned it there, and there'll be a lot of casual golf fans who probably don't take much notice in what happens until the first tee shot is hit on a Thursday, and won't have read the pretty treacherous conditions that it looks like we're going to be seeing. Thunderstorms certainly looking likely on Thursday, and then the wind really picking up on Friday, and the wet weather continuing through the weekend. What does this mean in terms of the profile of golfer that you want to be backing and the guys that you want to avoid?
Well, I think it'll definitely suit the longer hitters. This golf course is long enough without the grass being mowed towards the tee boxes, which it is, makes it even longer than the yardage on paper. And then, of course, with the recent downpours that there were last week and forecast for throughout this week as well. So apart from the wind, I think this golf course is going to play incredibly long this week. And those who hit the ball a mile will just have a significant advantage. And I can see it being, driving distance usually plays a part in. But then, we have seen the likes of Danny Willett and Jordan Spieth when he was firing here, wasn't the longest hitter and all this. There's been plenty of examples recently where long hitters really, haven't dominated here. But I think Dustin Johnson was a sign in November, in the November Masters. The way it was soft then, I think we're probably going to see similar conditions here. I know they have the sub-air systems where they can speed things up, and we'll see how much they're used and whether it can speed it up or not, because the rain that has fallen all year has already been at record levels, never mind what's fallen in the last week. So I think it's going to be really soft and really long. As for the wind, that could play into some European golfers' hands. The likes of Justin Rose and Shane Lowry and guys like that who do have some form around here as well and know how to play in the wind. But at the end of the day, I don't think it changes the picture too much. I still think around here the best golfers will come to the fore, and it's difficult to see a surprise result.
Now, Niall, sadly for you, given I've got your number up in the week before the Masters, I send you my ill thought out suggestions of who I'm going to back, and you have to reply. And I asked you what you thought of Keith Mitchell, and you weren't too keen. But all I'm hearing there, longer hitters, big drivers, it's coming home for Keith in my mind. Keith slipping on a green jacket on Sunday evening. You heard it here first. But no one wants to hear what I think. So we'll move on to before we get onto the second selection, because it's another player at the top end of the market. Just people will want to hear your thoughts on Scotty and Rahm. You mentioned there that not many golfers, not many Masters winners can turn up the season after and defend their title. Not even that. I mean, Masters winners have a terrible record long term after they win. It's a bizarre quirk, especially when you think that normally a Masters winner has pretty good form at the track before they win. So with that in mind, is Scheffler pretty easy to swerve for you here, or like Tiger, who of course did it very successfully? Do you think he could be the outlier?
Yeah, well, I think Tiger's the only one to do it in the last 23 years or so. I think there's only been a couple before that as well, in the previous 50 or so. So he's really up against it in terms of that stat. Who knows what it is, whether it's expectation following the win the year previous, or is it just to do with the obligations on the week and the Champions Dinner? I can really see the Champions Dinner being a proper headache in terms of preparation. What you have to deal with, and I would imagine it's almost a nervy affair as well for the winner to host an event like that in the lead up. So, and then you've got the par 3 contest too that friends and family often get involved with. So the preparation in terms of the 18 holes that you're going to play, which they normally prepare all week for, playing it a couple of times, it just upsets the equilibrium a bit. So that's probably the main reason for the bad record of defending champions. But Scotty Scheffler is in the mould of a different beast compared to other previous champions. Just even like Garcia, Willett, Matsuyama, guys like that. I think Scotty Scheffler could be. Who knows? But this run of form is lasting, 2 years now or so. Where previous golfers, even the likes of Rahm and McIlroy, when they dominated, the form just slips off at some stage, but it doesn't look like doing it with Scheffler. So he's probably got
Scheffler's right foot on
exactly. Yeah. So I think he's probably got more chance than most previous champions to buck that trend. But who knows? As for Jon Rahm, the other one of the top 3, obviously he was in great form at the start of the year, but pulled out through illness after one round of Sawgrass, where I think he shot 1 under in the first day or something. So he was in good shape, and then he was looked out of sorts at the match play and all too. So I actually expected for him to drift to slightly bigger mark than what he has following those last few weeks. So I think the price has made my mind up on that. But nevertheless, he's one that could overcome it quite comfortably as well. They're that good. So it's hard to choose between the front 3, but I went for McIlroy just because there's those less negatives, and I think he's kind of dealt with the pressure all year more impressively than he normally does.
It's a funny one with Rahm because it never really feels in my mind like he's contended that much at Augusta, but his form there reads 27th, 4th, 9th, 7th, 5th, 27th. Kind of sneaky top finishes without really ever being in the melting pot, apart from 2021 when Matsuyama won, where he was there on Sunday, but not really being involved. The next 2 in the market are Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas. They're the same price. Spieth and Thomas both 18 to 1, 6 places, 16, 8 places, 14, 10 places, 12 to 1, 12 places. One of them just slipped off the preview and the tips in on, and one of them, Justin Thomas, is the one that you've gone for. What is it, 2.5 points each way, is it, or 2 points each way?
2 points each way, yeah.
2 points each way, JT.
Yeah, I just think the price more than anything else talks to me here. I think I've backed them at 14 to 1 and less here before, and in a couple of the last 3 or 4 renewals here, and drifting towards that mark that he is this week. I think he's more than backable. He comes in with really decent ball striking form, great work around the greens all year long, and has been consistent like that. He hasn't lost any ground on the greens to the field since the US Open, around the greens since the US Open last June. So every performance, and we know that how good he is from tight lies and chipping around the greens. So, but nevertheless, for not to lose any ground any single week since last June to the field is incredible. Ball striking, he's not quite in the form that he was in the lead up to the USPGA that he won. His irons aren't quite as impressive as what they were in the lead in there, but he hasn't missed a cut all season. 60th was his last result, his worst result at Sawgrass a couple of weeks ago, but that has to be caveated by a really poor putting display that week. He was 10th at the Valspar a couple of weeks ago. Again, excellent tee to green, but just didn't fire on the green. So his long game, I think you could make the argument that Justin Thomas's game suits Augusta more than any other player in the field, possibly. He's just spurned a couple of opportunities here. Obviously, he had a 76 in round 1 last year, and then came through the field. He went 76 round 1, 66 in round 2. He shot the round of the day, and the Friday last year. Come through the field to finish 8th then from being out with a washing after round 1. I think he led at halfway a couple of years ago as well. There's been a couple of opportunities that have just slipped through his fingers here, but Justin Thomas doesn't let many opportunities slip through, and if he gets another one here, I think at Augusta, he could barge down the door. I think, you know, someone who has the capability now. He's won 2 majors. Not many in the game have won more who are currently playing. So yeah, I think the price that he's just drifted to in the last couple of weeks, through not so much coming in slightly under the radar in terms of his finishes, makes him a bet.
Yeah, so JT there a bet, and I'm sure for anyone who's watched the Netflix documentary, if JT and Jordan are watching this, they'll be delighted, and you know, Spieth will probably owe Justin a few quid, sorry, for not choosing him over the other one. Their competitive spirit seemingly has no bounds, those two. Into a couple more players, you've put up 2 points each way. Xander Schauffele, another one who's 22 to 1, 6 places, 20 to 1, 8, 18 to 1, 10 places, 16 to 1, 14 to 1, sorry, 12 places. What about Xander's chances? Another one with kind of very good major form and good Augusta form as well. Yeah,
really good major form. He comes here after last year. He actually missed a cut at the Masters, which is a slight negative if you're looking at trends. Not many miss the cut and then go on to win it the following year. But he was 13th in the PGA, 14th in the US Open, and then 15th at the Open at St Andrews last year. And I think you're always looking at guys who have decent form in recent majors, and he's certainly one of them who very rarely lets you down. He's gained strokes on the field in every single event he's played since the Masters last year. A full year of gaining strokes on the field, which is incredible, really. That his consistency is top notch. His last missed cut was the Masters here last year. He's since won 3 times, won the Zurich team event, and then the Travellers, and of course the Scottish Open before the Open Championship last year. But his numbers are just through the roof compared to the field, like consistently, where I just don't think he's going to be out of the places here this week. And he's one who's usually like all the rage in betting markets in the run up to majors. And is it just me, or has there been very little chat surrounding Xander Schauffele? A lot more chat around the likes of Tony Finau, who at slightly shorter doesn't really make sense to me than Xander Schauffele. I know you're quite keen.
Well, it's my big bet. That's a bloke.
I know you're quite keen on him, and obviously his form's unreal as well, Tony Finau. But I think the consistency of Xander Schauffele just suggests to me that he is definitely not going to be out of the top 10 this week, which makes him a great bet at the places. He does have form here at Augusta before, of course. He was 17th back in 2020, and then 3rd in 2021, 2nd in 2019. So yeah, he's got everything going for him at the venue as well. So I'm surprised that we're getting those prices about him this week with the place terms available.
Sorry, that's just me cashing out on my Finau bets. Xander there, the next selection, and at a similar price, a player whose rapid reascent of the game in the last couple of months has been incredible to watch. Jason Day, who enjoyed some incredible form at Augusta early in his career, former world number 1, looked like he had the world of golf at his feet, really. And then various injury issues, some personal tragedy, these kind of strange allergy and illness issues that he has as well, all contributed to a bit of a fall from grace. But he's 25 to 1, 6 places, 22, 8 places, 18, 10 places, 12 places is 16 to 1. Jason Day, there aren't many players, are there, in world golf currently playing as well as this man?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that I'll stick to my guns with this week. I think it is a mistake to leave Jason Day off any staking plan this week. If you're getting involved in the Masters, Jason Day has to be part of your plan. 7 appearances so far this year, worst performance was tied 19th at Sawgrass, which is just incredible in 7 starts. And in the fields that he's played in, it was the Amex, Torrey Pines, Phoenix Open, Riviera, Bay Hill, Sawgrass, and then the match play where he played quite well as well. It's an incredible run of figures and strong fields, and of course he does have the form around here. There is, of course, the fear that, you know, an injury or an allergy pops up throughout the week, but it hasn't. Well, I think there was a little bit at the match play that cropped up, but nevertheless he still played quite well there. But it's been consistent all year, and he has the capability of, if he gets in the contention here, he's going to be very hard to beat around Augusta. His game just is absolutely perfect for the place. His short game is through the roof. His iron play might not be as impressive as some others above him in the betting, but what he makes up for that, he will undoubtedly be one of the best performers around the green and on the greens, which every single year. You know, I mentioned in the trends piece that I wrote last week that around the green is actually more important than approach play around Augusta over the last 2 years. And although I do think around the greens will play slightly easier with the rain that's fallen, but yeah, everything points towards a big performance from Jason Day. And then there's the history with the Aussies around here as well. I think, yeah, it would be a great story too, wouldn't it? After his trials over the last couple of years and just how good he was, you know, back in 2015, 2016, it would be great to see him hit those heights. And for me, looking at him here, looking at his results, I think he's not far off the level that he was back then.
Amazingly, he's just still 35 years of age, Jason Day. As we say, former world number one, somebody who I think everyone thought was destined to win one of these green jackets, and maybe to crown off what has been an incredible year so far, this might be the time for him to do it. It was pretty clear to me, not necessarily someone who was on my radar, but when you're looking through the prices here and you see Victor Hovland sitting at 40 to 1 in 6 places, the same price as Corey Connors, who, whilst being an elite ball striker and having won last weekend, there are clearly putting deficiencies there. Matt Fitzpatrick, who comes in, horribly out of form and fitness issues are concerned there. Shane Lowry, who isn't in the same kind of form as we saw him in last season. Victor Hovland stands out in my eyes there as being the quality performer amongst the guys this price. I can't really work out why he is that price. And he's your next selection, another 2 point each way tip.
Yeah, I was half tempted to actually go bigger on the stakes on him. I was half tempted to make him 3 points each way and make him the second biggest selection. Looking back even in December, where he won the Hero at 16 under par there, he beat Scotty Scheffler, Cameron Young, Xander Schauffele, Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, Tony Finau, John Rahm. They were the players right behind him at the Hero World Challenge. That's just the level he can play to, and when he turns it on, God, he's a special player. And here, this one will really surprise you. 7 of the last 9 majors that have the strokes gained stats. I think there was 2 during COVID, or the Open Championship, I think, during COVID when Morikawa won. I don't think the strokes gained were taken there. 7 of his last 9 majors he has gained on the field around the greens.
That's mad, that. I mean,
would you believe that?
Does that stack up at Augusta? Or the 2 where he's dropped shots at those the two Masters?
No, yes. 2022 Masters is where he lost strokes. He gained in 2021. Amazing. Masters and the US Open of last year were the 2 that he lost ground to the field around the greens. That's incredible, isn't it, for someone who has that frailty? And then he was dismissed by plenty, probably including me, at St Andrews last year for that sole reason as well. Because how many times are you, within 50 yards of the green at St Andrews on a par 4 or a par 5, needing to chip? And back then he was 22nd, I don't know, wherever, 3rd in the field around the greens at St Andrews. It's incredible what he could achieve when he's, maybe just like Zalatoris that we've chatted about in recent years, who isn't maybe as bad as putter as what people made out anyway. The way he upped his game in the majors on the greens, just it looks like it's a similar trend for Victor Hovland, where around the greens he starts performing in majors. Of course, he's been in great form all season as well. Top 20 in Hawaii, 13th at Pebble, 20th at Riviera, 10th at the Arnold Palmer, and then 3rd at Sawgrass, behind Scheffler and Tyrrell Hatton. I don't put much weight on the match play, but there was no results there. But everything points towards a big effort here. 4th in the Open last year, and of course in the final group with McIlroy on the Sunday. That just, I can't stress how important that is in terms of bringing players on in the next major. Fitzpatrick was the last one we've seen who benefited playing with Mito Pereira in the final round of the PGA, goes out and wins the US Open next time out. Hovland has every chance of just repeating that. And I think he was in the top 6 or 7 or so last year, heading into the final round at Augusta, although he was out of it with how far clears Smith and Scheffler were. But I think he shot a final round 76 or something for him to tumble down the field a little. But he was in great shape after 3 rounds there as well. So yeah, I'm absolutely loving getting that 40-1 about him this week.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Looks like a cracking bet there, Victor Hovland. And the final one to make up the list of selections for you in this year's Masters, Niall, is Cameron Champ at a massive price, 225 to 1 6 places, 208 places, 175 to 1 10 places, 150 to 1 12 places. Went very well here last year with I think tied 10th finish, and you've seen enough in his game in the last couple of weeks, despite a missed cut, to think that he might be set to go well again.
Yeah, well, here are his recent results. Cut, 53rd, cut. And here I am tipping him up in the Masters. No, but it must be said, he missed a cut last week in Texas, but it was his best ball striking effort for a good 68 months. And it was his best effort with the irons since the Barron Nelson in May last year. Now, he did miss the cut, but I was down to, he has been woeful around and on the greens for a long period of time now. But the exact same was happening last year in the lead up to the Masters. He missed a cut at Sawgrass, and he missed a cut at the Texas Open before coming to the Masters and finishing 10th last year. And that's 3 appearances now, 10th, 19th, and what was his result? 26th. So he hasn't been outside the top 26 in 3 appearances here. He comes here, and I would rate him slightly better form than what he did last year when he finished 10th, just simply because of that ball striking effort last week in Texas. And of course, the rain suited making this course. If this course does play really, really long this week, then it'll play into Cameron Champ's hand. Whether he probably won't have enough, even if he's in contention, he probably won't have enough to win simply because of his putting and his work around the greens. But nevertheless, I think he could figure this week at big prices, just simply because of the length of the course.
Cameron Champ there, the final selection in Niall's previews. Just a couple more questions before we let you go. Niall, firstly, the live players. Now we've seen them be big price, or maybe bigger than they would normally be for most events since the competition was introduced last year. Their performances generally in fields, including PGA Tour players, haven't been particularly good. Is there anyone you can see was there anyone that you considered even from the Live Tour that caught your eye at a price?
Well, I tipped up Dustin Johnson at the start of the year in the anti-post preview at 25-1, thinking if he showed any sort of form in the lead-in, that would look quite pretty. He's around the same price now than what he was then. Hasn't shown much, obviously, but hasn't played much. I think he's played something like just over 20 rounds of competitive golf in the last 6 months or so, which is incredible.
Yeah.
But obviously Brooks winning last week, you could see him performing well. How has this come about that it was only 3 years ago that we were recording a podcast and I was defending the 7-1 about Bryson DeChambeau,
I know.
what kind of world are we living in now? That there's three figures about him this week, and obviously the course could play really long. If he turned up with any sort of game, who knows? He could figure well. He actually played well in the Open Championship. I think he top 10, definitely top 20. I think at St Andrews last year. So yeah, there's a few there. Harold Varner, I think, had a decent debut last year. But honestly, I can't really see any of them winning the event. I really can't, simply because how many trends and how much form do we look at where the winner of the Masters is usually really, really hot or has some kind of hot form coming in, and these guys just aren't playing at the same level, or even at the same intensity. I think which really matters, the same intensity coming in the Masters. They won't have felt the same pressure like the likes of Scheffler did at Sawgrass and guys like that. It's just hard to see them on a Sunday actually coming up with the goods in the heat of battle here. The other guys are just too good, I think, and have too much experience in recent weeks under that kind of pressure, where it's hard to see any of them figure. What about you? Do you reckon Dustin or Cameron Smith can?
No, I don't think so. I backed Taylor Gooch at a big price a couple of weeks ago, who's shortened up purely because he was tied 14th last year. Clearly has the approach. His iron play is very, very good, and it just seemed like compared to in terms of if you look at the live players, the discrepancy in his price and those at a shorter price just seemed a bit big. But I'll be very happy if that doesn't get close. If I never think about it again, come Thursday starting. I think a massive part of it as well isn't just the amount of golf you play. It's just for tour players, especially those who aren't towards the top end of the game. You have to make the cut in order to make your cash. I think as soon as you lose that intensity playing live, and your standards can drop so quickly because it doesn't matter how you play. You turn up, you get paid. If you win, you get paid even more. So that's my kind of look on it. A lot of talk.
What about Zalatoris this week? We've often discussed him in the last couple of majors. Like how are you going to cope if he manages a victory this week?
I won't.
But is this a case where we're thinking, we turned down 33-40 to 1 about Zalatoris whenever every single major in the last couple of years he's upped his game and has almost won? That is the one this week. Obviously you can't. Obviously he was out with injury for a time. He actually started quite well on his return from injury, and then has since tailed off a little. But who knows? He has the perfect game for around Augusta too.
No, he does. I mean, it would wound me. It's like I used to try back to Hideki every year for about 4, then left him off the list of the year he won. Yeah, I mean, I guess also because of the Masters. You mentioned it there when you don't have a player in contention on Sunday. Partly it's because the pool of players that you think can win are so small that inevitably, if you've spent a long time looking through the field, you've probably considered most players. So when there's someone at the top end of the leaderboard, you think, that was an opportunity missed. That was a big price because, it's easy to draw a line through those who don't have the length or don't have the iron play or, don't have the game to suit Augusta. At least that's what I tell myself every Sunday, every year.
Yeah, well, that's like, looking back last year, we discussed Scotty Scheffler and what would be a backable price, and it was 16 to 1 about him that week. And, it's insane looking back that we turned that opportunity down,
I know.
And then, you're right. I think that's part of the case against him this week as well, that if he goes and wins at 7 to 1, I think you're not going to be too disappointed that you weren't on. But I think looking back to last year, it was absolutely silly not to take the prices on offer.
I write a little preview for some friends of mine who aren't golf fans but tune in for the Masters every year, and I think a line in the preview was Scheffler and Smith are too short, and anyone who tells you otherwise needs their eyes checking. And come Sunday, look at the top end of the leaderboard and look who's first and second up. Thankfully, we had Cam Smith on side in the Open a couple of months later, so they forgave me. Tiger is obviously going to attract a lot of attention over the weekend. BoyleSports do have prices on to miss and to make the cut. 8 to 15 to make the cut, 11 to 8 to miss the cut. I mean, given the conditions this is going to be a hell of a physical test. That 11-8 looks big, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a decent price, to be fair. I haven't been part of pricing that up, but yeah, just with the length of the course and the lack of golf, obviously, you think he could. He has to be a big candidate for missing the cut. Early reports that I read earlier on today was that there was a few misplaced shots, but his work around the greens was quite good. So yeah, who knows what will materialise in that? I think it's a bit of a guessing game in terms of Tiger. The only thing is obviously, that some punters might not be alive to is that the Masters is a shortened field. There's only 88 players or so in it, and it's not like the usual miscut markets where the top 70 and ties or whatever make the weekend. There's more that make the cut here than miss it. So I think it's one of those weeks where you have to take that into account, and that's why a fair amount of players will be shorter than usual, obviously, to make the cut, especially with that many seniors in the field and that many amateurs in the field. They usually take up the bulk of those guys missing the cut. So it's a rare occasion that some of the best in the game miss the cut here. So it's worth keeping that in mind when looking at that market.
Yeah, you can find that under Inventor Bet on the BoyleSports website. Loads of other markets there, and we don't have time to go through many of them. But I know one did catch your eye in the top debutant market. There's each way betting here as well. A quarter of the three. Tom Kim heads the market at 7-2. Tagala 5-1. Mito Pereira 6-1, as is Kurt Kitayama. But it is another bomber in the form of Ryan Fox at 8-1, who's always been a feature in your columns and on the European Tour, or the DP World Tour, I should say now. And you think he could go well first time up at Augusta? Yeah,
Ryan Fox has hurt me down the years. He's been that inconsistent for me when I've been on. And then, of course, when I was on him at towards the end of last year, and the pain you went through watching Victor Perez hold them putts against him and then beating him in the playoff. But he's had a bright enough start to his PGA Tour career this year. He was 14th at Bay Hill, the Arnold Palmer, then 27th at Sawgrass. Two very decent results there around two quite tough golf courses as well. He missed a cut last week in Texas, but he was decent off the tee. His irons fell off the cliff a little. But nevertheless, I think he's got the talent to make it on the PGA Tour, without a doubt. I think he's got a special temporary membership now. So I can really see him being a success across the water. And Augusta is one of them places where you can bomb it down. And he's one of those who could shoot a really low score any of the days. So if he does make the cut, or if he does play 4 rounds, or even in the first round leader market, he could be worth considering. One of those guys who could just make birdies for fun one single day, and eagles on the par 5. So even in the lowest round score market, which will be priced all 4 days with BoyleSports as well, he'll be worth considering there. But I think top debutant, there's a few weak links towards the top of the market. I think Tom Kim will be vulnerable now. The length of this course that's going to play, he's one of the shorter, for one of the more elite players on the tour. He's definitely one of the shorter hitters. I think Kitayama might struggle as well. Mito Pereira's in there from Live Golf too, and then you've got you've got obviously a bunch of amateurs in there as well towards the end of the field. So Ryan Fox around 8-1 with 3 places on offers, a decent bet.
And that brings our Masters 2023 preview to an end. Make sure you go and check out at BoyleSports, because who are you backing to win the green jacket at Augusta? Whether it's one of Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, or Jon Rahm, or if you think that someone like Niall's tip there, Victor Hovland, was under Scheffler, is primed to challenge. BoyleSports are offering new customers £20 in free bets when you place a £10 bet on the Masters. They're also paying 12 places and are letting you pick your own extra places for the first major of the year, whether that is 6, 8, 10 or 12. And once it's afterway, BoyleSports have you covered at the Masters with a wide range of in-play markets, including all 3 balls and 2 balls. You can also use their Acca Rewards to boost your selections by up to 100% on all golf accumulators, whether that be in-play or pre-event. For more info, head to BoyleSports.com. Thank you very much to Niall for sharing his tips and selections with us. Enjoy the golf, and please do ensure that you gamble responsibly.